I used to think restlessness meant I was not healed. Like if I were truly moving on, I would feel calm all the time. Still, detached, peaceful in a way that never cracked. But there was a season after the separation when I could not sit still. Not physically at first. Emotionally. My body felt like it was waiting for something before my mind had permission to know what it was. I would wake up before my alarm with my chest tight, walk into a room and forget why I went there, check my phone without wanting to admit I was checking, start cleaning at midnight, move furniture around, delete old photos, then stare at the empty space like I had just made room for something I could not see yet. And the strangest part was, I was not exactly sad anymore. Not like before. The crying had softened. The obsession had loosened. The old ache was still there sometimes. But now there was something else underneath it. A pull. A pressure. A quiet inner movement. Like my spirit was packing before my life had announced the trip. And maybe you have been feeling this too. That strange restlessness in your chest. That feeling that something is coming. But you cannot explain it to anyone without sounding foolish. You are tired of the old cycle, but not fully settled into the new one. You miss them sometimes, but you no longer want the version of love that made you lose yourself. You feel calmer than before, yet somehow more alert, more sensitive, more awake. What if that restlessness is not anxiety? What if your spirit knows a reunion is near before your reality shows proof? Not necessarily a reunion built from the same wound. Not the old pattern returning. Not chasing. Not begging. Not emotional chaos dressed as destiny. A real reunion. A soul-level return. A meeting of energy that can only happen after both people have been moved, broken open, humbled, and changed. Because sometimes before union comes back into physical form, your spirit feels the movement first. The field shifts. Old energy clears. Dreams become vivid. Synchronicities increase. Your body becomes restless because something inside you knows. The waiting season is changing shape. So if you have been feeling unsettled lately, if your sleep has changed, if old memories are resurfacing without pulling you backward the same way, if your intuition keeps whispering, something is close, stay with this message. Your restlessness may not mean you are losing peace. It may mean your spirit is recognizing movement before your eyes can see it. And by the end of this video, you may understand why the uneasiness in your body has been trying to tell you. A reunion is closer than it looks. Part 1. The restlessness started after the pain got quieter. I remember the strange phase after the worst crying ended. Not because I was suddenly healed. Not because I had finally moved on. Not because the connection stopped mattering. It was more confusing than that. The pain had changed shape. Before, it was loud. Obvious. It had a name. A face. A message thread I kept opening even when I knew nothing new would be there. It had songs attached to it, places attached to it, a certain time of night where the ache would get worse for no reason. In the beginning, heartbreak was almost easier to understand because it was so clear. I missed them. I wanted answers. I wanted one more conversation. I wanted the silence to break. I wanted the version of them I remembered to come back and explain why everything became so distant. But then, after a while, the pain got quieter. Not gone, just quieter. It stopped screaming and started humming underneath everything. And that is when the restlessness began. I did not know what to do with it. I would wake up earlier than usual, sometimes before the alarm, with my chest feeling tight, but not exactly sad. I would lie there in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what my body was waiting for. There was no message, no event, no obvious reason, just this strange inner alertness. Like some part of me was standing at the edge of my life, listening for footsteps I could not hear yet. At first, I thought it meant I was going backward. I thought, why do I feel this uneasy if I'm healing? Why does my body feel like something is about to happen? Why can't I just relax? That question bothered me, because everyone talks about healing like it is supposed to become peace. Like one day you stop caring, stop checking, stop wondering, stop feeling the invisible pull. But my healing did not feel like that. It felt messy, human, contradictory. Some days, I genuinely did not want the old dynamic back. I could see how exhausted I had been. I could remember the anxiety, the waiting, the way I became careful with my words, the way I tried to act calm when my nervous system was quietly begging for clarity. I knew I could not return to that version of love. And still, my spirit felt unsettled. Not desperate. Not like before. Not that old panic that makes you reach for the phone at midnight and call it intuition. This was different. This felt like movement. Like something inside me had stopped grieving the past and started sensing a future my mind could not explain yet. I remember one night especially. It was late. Too late to be cleaning. But I suddenly could not stand the room as it was. The pile of clothes on the chair. The old receipts on the dresser. The cup beside the bed. The little objects that had been sitting there for weeks, carrying the energy of a version of me who was always waiting. I started cleaning at almost midnight. Quietly. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just restless. I folded clothes I had ignored for days. I threw away things I did not need. I opened a drawer and found something connected to them. Nothing big. Nothing anyone else would understand. Just one small object with too much memory inside it. I held it for a moment. And the strange thing was, I did not fall apart. A few months earlier, that would have destroyed me. I would have sat on the floor and cried with the object in my hand like it was evidence of everything I lost. But that night, I only felt tenderness. Tenderness. And a quiet knowing that I could not keep letting old energy live in every corner of my space. So I put it away. Not with hatred. Not with some dramatic final goodbye. Just gently. Like I was saying, you mattered. But you cannot keep taking up the center of my life. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the room. It was cleaner. Still imperfect. Still ordinary. But something felt different. Like I had made space for something I could not name. That is when I began to understand the restlessness differently. Maybe it was not a sign that I was broken. Maybe it was not proof that I was still attached in the same way. Maybe my spirit was preparing. Preparing before my mind had a story. Preparing before life had evidence. Preparing before any visible reunion could happen. Because there is a kind of restlessness that comes from fear. And there is another kind that comes from transition. Fear feels frantic. It makes you chase. It makes you check. It makes you reach for the old person, the old pattern, the old emotional drug. But transition feels different. Still uncomfortable. Still unsettling. But cleaner. It makes you clear space. Tell the truth. Pull your energy back. Change small things in your environment. Move your body. Rearrange your life in ways that do not make sense yet. It does not always say, go back. Sometimes it says, get ready. And maybe that is where you are right now. Your pain has gotten quieter, but your spirit has not gotten still. You are not crying the way you were before. You are not obsessing the way you used to. You may still have moments. Of course you do. A song can still move through your chest. A memory can still catch you off guard. Their name can still create a little pause in your body. But it does not destroy you the same way. And yet, there is this restless feeling. like your soul is standing up before your life has caught up. You may feel it in small, realistic ways. You wake up and immediately feel like something is different, even though your room looks the same. You walk into the kitchen and forget why you went there. You open your phone, then close it, because you realize you are not actually looking for anything. You feel drawn to clean, delete, organize, simplify. You feel irritated by clutter. You feel tired of old conversations. You feel like certain people's energy is suddenly too loud. You crave quiet. But when the quiet comes, you feel like something is moving inside it. That is a very specific stage of the journey. It is not the raw heartbreak stage. It is not full peace either. It is the in-between. The hallway. The place where the old emotional timeline has lost its grip. But the new chapter has not fully opened in front of you. And in that hallway, your body may feel restless. Because the spirit often senses movement before the mind sees proof. This is especially true with deep soul connections. A twin flame bond does not always move first through external events. Sometimes the energy shifts before the message arrives. Sometimes the field changes before the physical reunion becomes visible. Sometimes your spirit feels the approach before your life has anything to point to. That can make you feel almost foolish. You think, why do I feel like something is coming when nothing has happened? Why am I more alert now that I am less attached? Why do I feel their energy differently? Why do old memories keep returning, but not in the same painful way? These questions matter, because when reunion energy begins moving, it may not feel like excitement at first. It may feel like pressure, a subtle pressure in the chest, a strange emotional alertness, a desire to prepare, a sense that the waiting season is changing shape, not ending in the way your old wound demanded, but transforming. There is a difference. The old wound wants reunion as rescue. It says, if they come back, I will finally feel okay. If they choose me, the pain will make sense. If they return, I will know I was not abandoned. But the awakened spirit feels reunion differently. It does not want to go back to chaos. It does not want to repeat the same silence, the same confusion, the same self-abandonment. It wants a meeting from a different frequency. A reunion that does not require you to become smaller. A return that does not reopen the old wound. A connection that can stand in truth. That is why the restlessness may feel so strange. Part of you senses something near, but another part of you knows it cannot be like before. You may miss them, and still not want the old version of the connection. You may feel their energy, and still choose not to chase. You may sense movement, and still know your peace matters more than proof. That emotional contradiction is not confusion. It is maturity. The heart remembers. The spirit discerns. For a while, both speak at the same time. The heart says, I still feel them. The spirit says, only if it is aligned. The heart says, what if reunion is near? The spirit says, then I must meet it as someone who no longer abandons herself. That is the deeper preparation. Not just preparing for them, preparing for you, for the version of you who can receive without collapsing, who can feel without chasing, who can recognize love without handing over control of your entire nervous system. I wish someone had told me this earlier. Restlessness after heartbreak does not always mean the wound is reopening. Sometimes it means the wound is no longer running the whole system. Something else is waking up underneath it. A deeper knowing, a cleaner pull, a sense that your life is rearranging before the evidence arrives. You may not know whether the reunion is a message, a meeting, a dream, a conversation, an energetic return, or a completely different kind of soul-level recognition. But your spirit may feel the shift before your mind can label it. That is why you feel unsettled. Not because you are failing. Not because you are losing your peace. Not because healing was fake, but because transition rarely feels calm at first. Transition feels like standing between worlds. One foot in the life you survived. One foot in the life you are being prepared to enter. And the body does not always know how to relax in that space. So it moves. It cleans. It wakes early. It gets sensitive. It feels charged silence. It senses something before anything happens. It becomes restless. And if you listen closely, not with panic, not with obsession, but with grounded attention, you may hear what the restlessness is really saying. Not, go back. Not, chase. Not, force the reunion. But, something is shifting. Stay aligned. Prepare your field. Do not return to the version of yourself who confused suffering with destiny. That is the first message. Your restlessness is not always a warning that you are going backward. Sometimes it is the first sign that your spirit has begun moving forward. And once the pain gets quieter, your body starts sensing what your mind is not ready to name. That is where the next part begins. Lesson of this chapter. Restlessness is not always a sign that you are going backward. Sometimes it appears when your spirit feels movement before your life shows evidence. When the worst pain gets quieter but your body becomes more alert, sensitive, and unsettled. Your soul may be transitioning out of survival and into preparation. And what feels like uneasiness today? Maybe your spirit recognizing that a reunion is closer than it looks. Part 2. Your body feels the shift before your mind can explain it. There is an uncomfortable truth about soul connections that took me a long time to accept. The body often knows first, before the mind has language, before the heart feels safe enough to admit it, before anything happens in the physical world. Your body begins reacting to movement you cannot prove yet, and that can make you feel almost foolish. Because how do you explain to someone that you feel something coming? Not because you received a message, not because anyone confirmed anything, not because the person reached out or gave you a clear sign. You just feel it, in the chest, in the stomach, in the way your sleep changes, in the way familiar rooms suddenly feel charged with invisible movement. I used to dismiss that feeling immediately. I would tell myself, this is anxiety. This is attachment. This is my nervous system still missing them. This is what happens when you love someone too deeply and do not get closure. And sometimes, yes, it was anxiety. Sometimes it was grief echoing through the body. Sometimes it was the old wound trying to convince me to check my phone, search for proof, or reopen the same emotional door. But not every alertness came from fear. That was the part one did not understand at first. There were moments when my body felt awake, but not panicked. Restless, but not desperate. Sensitive, but not broken. It was like my spirit was listening to something my mind could not hear yet. I remember one morning waking up at 4:12. No alarm. No sound. No notification. The room was still dark, and my phone was face down on the nightstand. For a few seconds, I just lay there with my hand over my chest. My heartbeat felt stronger than usual. Not fast enough to scare me. Just present. Like my body was trying to get my attention. The first thought that came was them. Of course it was. When someone has lived inside your emotional field for long enough, your mind still reaches for their name before it reaches for logic. I wondered if they were awake too. I wondered if they had dreamed of me. I wondered if something had shifted in them. Then I judged myself for wondering. That is how quickly the inner conflict begins. One part of you feels the pull. Another part of you says, stop, don't do this again. One part senses movement. Another part says, you're just making meaning because silence hurts. One part whispers, Something is close. Another part says, you said that before and nothing happened. That inner contradiction can be exhausting, especially after separation, especially after you have already survived the heartbreak once. You do not want to be fooled by hope again. You do not want to read into every feeling. You do not want to become the person who mistakes longing for intuition. So you try to shut the sensation down. You try to be practical, grounded, detached. You get out of bed. You make coffee. You answer messages. You move through the day like nothing invisible is pressing against your chest. But the body keeps speaking. Maybe you feel it as sudden pressure in the heart. Maybe as a wave of emotion that comes from nowhere. Maybe as a stomach drop when there is no obvious trigger. Maybe you feel unusually alert before sleep. Maybe you keep waking up during the same window of the night. Maybe certain songs make you pause, but not in the old devastating way. Maybe their name appears in your mind without the same ache attached to it. Maybe you walk into a room and feel like the air has shifted. Not dramatically, subtly, like the energy around your life is being rearranged, and no one else sees it. That is the lonely part. From the outside, nothing has happened. No message, no reunion, no confirmation, no physical evidence. But inside, your body feels like it is standing near a door that is not opened yet. How do you explain that? How do you tell someone, I feel restless, but not in the way I used to. I feel their energy, but I do not want to chase. I feel something moving, but I do not know what it is. Most people would tell you to ignore it. They would say, you're overthinking. You need sleep. You're still attached. And sometimes you do need rest. Sometimes your body is asking for care, not interpretation. But chosen ones often know when a sensation carries a different texture. You know when something feels like panic. And you know when something feels like recognition. Panic feels sharp. It makes you reach outward. It makes you need proof immediately. It makes your thoughts race in circles. It makes your body feel unsafe unless someone else responds. Recognition feels different. It can still be intense. It can still make you restless. But underneath it, there is a strange quiet. A pull that does not scream. A knowing that does not beg. A sensation that says, fais attention. Not, lose yourself. That difference matters. I remember hearing a song once while driving. It was not one of the songs that used to break me. It was not attached to a specific memory. But something in the melody brought their energy into the car so suddenly that I had to lower the volume. For a second, I felt them. Not like fantasy. Not like obsession. More like a presence moving through the edge of my awareness. My hands stayed on the steering wheel. The road kept moving. The world looked normal. But inside, something softened and tightened at the same time. That is such a strange combination. Softened, because the connection still carried tenderness. Tightened, because my body remembered the pain too. I did not know what to do with the feeling. The old version of me would have taken it as a sign to act. Text them. Check their profile. Look for confirmation. Find meaning somewhere external. But this time, I just kept driving. I let the feeling exist. I let it move through me. I did not turn it into a command. And after a few minutes, the intensity passed. What remained was not panic. It was awareness. That was new. That was important. Because before reunion energy can be understood clearly, you have to stop treating every sensation like an emergency. Your body may feel the shift before your mind can explain it. But your mind does not have to turn the shift into chaos. You can notice. You can breathe. You can ask, is this pulling me backward or preparing me forward? That question is everything. When the old cycle was active, your body may have felt restless because it was waiting for relief, waiting for their message, waiting for their attention, waiting for the silence to break, waiting for proof that you still mattered. That restlessness was painful. It made you feel dependent on something outside yourself. But the restlessness before aligned reunion feels different. It does not only make you want them, it makes you want truth. It makes you want your space clean, your energy clear, your boundaries intact, your heart honest, your life less cluttered with things that no longer match you. It does not pull you into begging. It pulls you into preparation. And preparation can feel uncomfortable, because your body starts sensing change before your mind has a plan. You may suddenly feel sensitive around certain people. A conversation that used to feel normal now drains you. A place you used to enjoy now feels too loud. A habit you used to use for distraction no longer comforts you. Your body starts rejecting old energy. Not because you are becoming dramatic, because your field is shifting. Your spirit knows something cannot meet you in the same environment that kept you tied to old pain. So the body begins responding. You feel the need to simplify, to rest, to clear, to be alone, to listen, to stop explaining yourself to people who only understand the version of you that tolerated more. That is part of the shift too. A reunion is not only about two people coming back into contact. It is about the field becoming ready. Your inner field, your emotional field, your nervous system, your willingness to stay grounded when energy intensifies, your capacity to feel connection without abandoning your own center. That is why your body becomes so involved. The body is the place where attachment lived. It is also the place where alignment begins to feel real. Your mind can tell stories all day. Your mind can analyze signs, memories, dreams, numbers, names, and timing. But your body tells you what the connection actually does to your peace. Does the feeling make you shrink? Does it make you chase? Does it make you abandon your boundaries? Does it make you become anxious and small? Or does it make you become more honest? More awake? More prepared? More devoted to your own alignment? That is how you begin discerning the shift. I remember one afternoon standing in my kitchen, washing a mug I had already washed. I was not thinking clearly. I kept moving things around, opening cabinets, closing them, picking up my phone, putting it down. Not because I was waiting for a message exactly. Something just felt unsettled. Then suddenly I had this quiet thought. My life feels like it is holding its breath. That sentence came out of nowhere. And it described everything. Not panic. Not grief. A pause before movement. A stillness that was not empty. A silence that felt like something was being arranged underneath it. That is what many chosen ones feel before a shift. Life appears still on the surface, but the spirit feels movement underneath. You may notice synchronicities increasing. You may dream more vividly. You may wake up with emotions that do not seem fully yours. You may feel sudden warmth in your chest. You may sense their energy around you even when you have not spoken. You may feel drawn to change your routine, your room, your appearance, your schedule, your habits. And your mind may say, "Why am I acting like this?" But your spirit may already know. Something is approaching. Not necessarily in the exact way your old wound imagined. Not necessarily tomorrow. Not necessarily with the same emotional pattern returning. But movement is near. The field is changing. And your body is registering the shift. This is why you have to be gentle with yourself during this stage. Do not shame every sensation. Do not worship every sensation either. Hold the middle. Feel it. Question it. Breathe through it. Let the body speak without letting fear translate every word. There is a difference between spiritual anticipation and emotional panic. Spiritual anticipation may feel restless, but it does not ask you to betray yourself. It may make you alert, but it does not make you desperate. It may bring memories, but it does not demand that you reopen the wound. It may make you feel their presence, but it does not remove your choice. Fear says, do something now. Recognition says, stay awake. Fear says, chase before you lose it. Recognition says, prepare before it arrives. Fear says, you need proof. Recognition says, you need alignment. And maybe your body has been trying to tell you this. Maybe the restlessness is not random. Maybe the interrupted sleep is not meaningless. Maybe the emotional waves are not proof that you are still stuck. Maybe your spirit is sensing movement before your circumstances catch up. But please hear this clearly. If reunion is near, your job is not to chase it. Your job is to remain aligned enough to meet it differently. Not from panic. Not from abandonment fear. Not from the version of you who once confused being chosen with being safe. From the version of you who can feel the shift and still stay with yourself. That is the preparation. That is the difference. Your body may feel the reunion energy first, but your spirit is asking you to respond from maturity, to listen without spiraling, to feel without forcing, to stay open without becoming unstable. Because the reunion that is truly aligned will not require you to lose the peace you fought so hard to find. And once you understand that, the next question becomes even more important. How do you know whether this restlessness is fear or sacred anticipation? That is where the next part begins. Lesson of this chapter. Your body may register energetic movement before your mind has a story for it. Not every restless feeling is anxiety. Some sensations carry recognition, transition, and preparation. The key is learning whether the feeling pulls you backward into panic or forward into alignment. Part 3. This is not the same anxiety you felt during the old cycle. I had to learn the difference between the anxiety that pulls you backward and the restlessness that prepares you forward. At first, they felt almost the same. Both lived in the body. Both made my chest feel tight. Both interrupted my sleep. Both made ordinary moments feel charged with something I could not explain. So naturally, I confused them. I thought every restless feeling meant I was still trapped in the old wound. I thought every sudden wave of energy meant I was not healed. I thought if my body reacted, then maybe I was still addicted to the connection. And sometimes I was. I want to be honest about that. There were nights when the restlessness was not spiritual anticipation. It was attachment. It was withdrawal. It was the old cycle trying to restart. It was the part of me that still wanted to check their profile, read old messages, search for signs, and convince myself that the silence was secretly meaningful. That kind of anxiety had a very specific taste. It was sharp, urgent, almost impatient. It did not ask me to listen. It pushed me to act. Text them. Check on them. Look for proof. Find their name somewhere. Turn every number, song, dream, and memory into evidence that I should keep waiting. That old anxiety always made me leave myself. That is how I started recognizing it. It did not bring me closer to peace. It pulled me out of my body. My hands would get restless. My breathing would become shallow. My stomach would tighten like I was waiting for bad news. And my thoughts would begin moving too fast. What if they forgot me? What if they moved on? What if I let go too soon? What if this restlessness means I am supposed to reach out? What if reunion is near and I miss it because I stay silent? That last one was dangerous. Because fear can dress itself like destiny. It can sound spiritual. It can say, "This is your sign. This is divine timing. This is your soul telling you to do something." but underneath the spiritual language, the body is panicking. And panic is not the same as intuition. I had to learn that slowly, painfully, through nights where I obeyed the anxiety and felt worse afterward, through moments where I checked their page and came away feeling emptier, through messages I almost sent just to stop the ache, through the shame of realizing I was not always seeking connection. Sometimes I was seeking relief. That is a hard truth to admit. Sometimes the old cycle teaches your nervous system to mistake relief for love. They go quiet. You panic. They return. You feel alive. They pull away. You collapse. They send one small message. You breathe again. After enough cycles, your body starts believing the high after pain is proof of destiny. But it is not always destiny. Sometimes it is a nervous system surviving inconsistency. And that kind of anxiety does not prepare you for reunion. It prepares you to repeat the wound. There is a difference. The restlessness I am talking about now, the one that comes when your spirit knows something is near, feels different, still uncomfortable, still strange, still hard to explain, but cleaner. It does not make you want to abandon yourself. It makes you want to prepare yourself. That is the difference. Old anxiety says, go get proof. Sacred restlessness says, clear your energy. Old anxiety says, check if they are still there. Sacred restlessness says, come back to yourself. Old anxiety says, do something before you lose them. Sacred restlessness says, become still enough to recognize what is truly coming. And I know, when you are in it, the difference can feel subtle. Especially if you have been through separation. Especially if your body has memories of waiting. Especially if silence once meant danger. You may feel the restlessness and immediately assume something is wrong. You may think, oh no, I'm spiraling again. But look closer. What does the feeling make you want to do? That question helped me more than anything. Does it make you want to chase? Or does it make you want to clean your space? Does it make you want to beg for answers? Or does it make you want to become honest about what you can no longer tolerate? Does it make you want to reopen old wounds? Or does it make you want to close old loops? Does it make you desperate for their attention? Or does it make you more sensitive to your own alignment? Because sacred restlessness often feels like preparation without a clear reason. You may suddenly want to change your sheets, rearrange your room, delete photos that no longer hurt the same way, but still feel heavy. Stop talking to people who drain you. Pull back from conversations that keep you in the old version of yourself. You may feel called to rest more, or walk more, or journal, or sit in silence even though silence used to scare you. You may feel like your body wants to make space, not because you are trying to manifest through force, not because you are desperate, but because something inside you knows your field is changing. I remember one night when I felt restless and almost misunderstood it. It was around midnight. The room was quiet. My phone was beside me. For a moment, I felt that familiar pull. That old doorway. I could have checked. I could have looked for something. I could have tried to turn the feeling into proof. But something stopped me. Not fear. A pause. A small inner stillness beneath the movement. Instead of checking, I stood up and started clearing my desk. Nothing dramatic. Old receipts. A notebook I had not opened in months. A water glass. A few papers I kept moving from one pile to another, but never actually dealing with. And as I cleaned, I realized something. The restlessness was not asking me to reach for them. It was asking me to remove what no longer belonged around me. That was new. Old anxiety made me search outside myself. This restlessness made me change the space around my own spirit. It was not about controlling reunion. It was about becoming ready for whatever reunion would require. And that kind of readiness is not passive. It is quiet work. The work of no longer romanticizing confusion. The work of no longer calling mixed signals mysterious. The work of no longer giving access to people who only know how to love you when you are available for pain. The work of becoming someone who can feel energy without being controlled by it. Because if reunion is near, you cannot meet it as the version of you who once begged for emotional crumbs. Not if it is meant to be different. Not if it is meant to be sacred. Not if it is meant to heal instead of repeat. That is why the restlessness may come with discomfort. It is not only saying something is coming. It may also be saying, make sure you do not meet it from the wound. That line stayed with me. Make sure you do not meet it from the wound. Because reunion can happen. And still repeat the old cycle if nothing inside you has changed. A message can come. And still reopen the same pain if you answer from fear. A person can return. And still trigger the old pattern if your boundaries are not alive yet. Energy can intensify. And still become obsession if you do not know how to stay grounded. So the spirit prepares you before the event. It makes you restless. It makes old things feel uncomfortable. It makes the familiar feel too tight. It wakes you up before the alarm. It stirs emotions that have been sitting quietly under the surface. It makes your body feel like something is approaching, but also like something has to be cleared first. That is why sacred restlessness does not always feel peaceful. It is not the peace of arrival. It is the pressure of transition. There is a difference. Arrival feels settled. Transition feels charged. Arrival feels like exhale. Transition feels like the breath before the door opens. And maybe you are in that breath right now. Not in panic. Not in full certainty. Just in that charged space where your body knows life is shifting before your mind has details. This can be confusing because the old cycle taught you to fear intensity. It taught you that any strong feeling might lead to pain. So now, when you feel movement, you may brace. You may ask, is this another trick? Am I about to be disappointed again? Can I trust what I feel? Is this reunion energy or just my wound trying to survive? Those are fair questions. Do not shame them. Your caution is not a lack of faith. It may be wisdom now. You have been through enough to know that not every pull deserves your surrender. Not every emotional wave is divine instruction. Not every restless night means you should reach backward. So test the feeling gently. Not with paranoia. With discernment. Ask, does this feeling make me smaller? Does it make me abandon my peace? Does it make me need an immediate outcome? Does it make me tolerate what I already know hurts me? Or does it make me clearer? More honest? More prepared? More connected to my body? More devoted to alignment than fantasy? The answers will tell you a lot. Old anxiety usually makes you negotiate with your standards. Sacred restlessness strengthens them. Old anxiety makes you say, maybe I can accept less if it means they come back. Sacred restlessness says, if they return, it has to meet the version of me who no longer survives on less. Old anxiety makes you chase the person. Sacred restlessness prepares the field. Old anxiety wants the reunion to rescue you. Sacred restlessness prepares you to meet reunion without losing yourself. That is the shift. And it is not always comfortable. Sometimes sacred restlessness feels like grief too, because preparation requires release. You may feel excited and sad in the same day, hopeful and cautious, open and guarded, soft and strong. You may miss them, and still know you do not want the old version back. You may feel reunion near, and still feel afraid of what it would ask of you. You may want the door to open, and still wonder whether you are ready to stand in front of it differently this time. That contradiction is human. Do not turn it into proof that you are confused. The heart can remember. The spirit can prepare. Both can happen together. I remember realizing that my restlessness did not feel like begging anymore. It felt like readiness with trembling hands. That is the only way I can describe it. Readiness, but not arrogance. Hope, but not obsession. Sensitivity, but not collapse. A part of me felt something moving. Another part of me knew I had to stay grounded no matter what moved. That is when I began trusting the restlessness more. Not because it promised a specific outcome, but because it was not asking me to betray myself. It was not asking me to chase. It was not asking me to reopen pain. It was asking me to prepare, to clear, to listen, to become honest, to stop romanticizing what I had outgrown, to make space for a reunion that would require a different version of me. And maybe that is what your restlessness is asking too. Not run back. Not force contact. Not prove the connection. But become ready. Because if the reunion is truly near, it will not need your panic to find you. It will need your alignment. It will need your emotional honesty. It will need the version of you who can feel deeply and still choose peace. The version who can answer from truth, not desperation. The version who can recognize whether the return is healed or simply familiar. That is the preparation. And once you understand the difference between old anxiety and sacred restlessness, you stop fearing every unsettled feeling. You stop judging yourself for sensing movement. You stop assuming restlessness means regression. Sometimes it is not regression at all. Sometimes it is your spirit packing for a new chapter. And preparation often begins with a strange urge to clear the field around you. That is where the next part begins. Lesson of this chapter. Old anxiety makes you chase. Sacred restlessness makes you prepare. The old cycle pulls you into panic, checking, proving, and self-abandonment. But reunion restlessness feels different. It may still feel unsettling, but it guides you toward clearing, honesty, boundaries, and alignment. And when the feeling prepares you forward instead of pulling you backward, your spirit may already know something is approaching. Part 4. You started clearing things without knowing why. I remember suddenly wanting to throw things away. Not in anger. Not in that dramatic way where you delete everything because you are trying to prove you are done. It was quieter than that. Almost instinctive. I would walk into my room and feel like the air was too full. Not messy exactly. Just heavy. The chair with clothes on it felt heavy. The drawer I kept avoiding felt heavy. The old screenshots in my phone felt heavy. The playlist I used to listen to when I missed them felt heavy. Even certain objects on my nightstand started feeling like they belonged to someone I was no longer becoming. And I did not understand it at first. I thought maybe I was just trying to distract myself. Maybe cleaning was my way of not thinking. Maybe organizing my space was easier than organizing my heart. And maybe part of that was true. But there was something deeper happening too. Something spiritual. Something energetic. Something my mind did not have language for yet. My spirit was clearing the field. Before reunion energy can enter your life in a new way, the old emotional environment has to change. Not only externally, internally. But sometimes the internal shift begins through physical things. You suddenly cannot tolerate clutter. You suddenly want to wash your sheets. You suddenly want to move your bed. You suddenly want to delete photos you once could not look at without crying. You suddenly want to clean out your closet. You suddenly want your room to feel like someone new can breathe there. Not because you hate the past. Not because the past meant nothing. But because your spirit knows. Something cannot come into a space still crowded with old pain. I remember finding an old item connected to them. Something small. Honestly, if someone else had seen it, they would not have understood why I stopped moving. It was not expensive, not dramatic, not even obviously romantic. But my body knew. My hand froze. My chest tightened a little. And for a few seconds, I was back there. Back in the feeling. Back in the season where I kept hoping the silence would become a message. Back in the version of me who treated every little memory like proof that the connection was still alive somewhere. I held it in my hand for a while, and I waited for the breakdown. But it did not come. There was sadness. Yes. Tenderness. Yes. A little ache behind the throat. But not devastation. That surprised me. A few months earlier, that object would have pulled me under. I would have sat on the floor and turned it into a whole ceremony of grief. But this time I just whispered, "You can't stay here anymore." Not to them, to the energy, to the version of me that had been living around the object, to the emotional timeline it represented. And I put it away, not thrown away violently, not destroyed, just removed from the center. That distinction matters. Sometimes clearing does not mean erasing. Sometimes clearing means relocating what no longer deserves emotional authority over your space. You can honor what happened, without letting it occupy the room where your future is trying to enter. You can respect the memory, without letting the memory become an altar. You can admit someone mattered, without building your whole life around their absence. That is what clearing teaches you. It is not just about things. It is about access. What still has access to your energy? What still influences your mood? What still pulls your body backward? What still makes your nervous system brace? What still whispers old stories into your present life? Because your environment carries emotional memory. The bed where you cried, the phone where you waited, the clothes you wore during that season, the songs you kept replaying, the messages you saved, the screenshots you told yourself were harmless, the gifts you could not decide what to do with. All of it holds charge. Not because objects have power over you, but because your energy has been connected to them. And when reunion energy approaches, your spirit may begin clearing those charges. Not always consciously. Sometimes you just feel uncomfortable, restless, irritated by things you ignored before. You open a drawer and suddenly feel tired. You look at your room and feel like it belongs to a past version of you. You scroll through your camera roll and realize some photos are not memories anymore. They are hooks. Hooks into old longing, old waiting, old ache. And something in you says, no more. Not in bitterness, in readiness. That is the difference. Bitterness clears to punish the past. Readiness clears to make space for the future. Bitterness says, I want to erase them. Readiness says, I want my energy back. Bitterness moves from anger. Readiness moves from alignment. So ask yourself, when you feel the urge to clear, what is underneath it? Are you trying to make them feel your absence? Or are you trying to finally feel your own presence? Are you deleting because you want to prove you do not care? Or because your spirit feels tired of keeping emotional doors open through objects, photos, and old digital traces? Are you throwing things away in panic? Or simplifying because your body is asking for peace? There is no shame either way. Sometimes the first stage of clearing is messy. Sometimes you do delete out of pain. Sometimes you remove things because you cannot bear to see them anymore. That is human. But eventually clearing becomes softer, less reactive, more sacred. You stop cleaning to escape your feelings. You clean because your space is beginning to reflect your healing. I remember changing my sheets one afternoon. A simple thing, almost boring, but emotionally it felt enormous. The bed had become a place of waiting, of crying, of waking up with my chest tight, of checking my phone before my eyes were even fully open, of replaying conversations in the dark. And when I stripped the sheets off, I suddenly felt this strange wave of grief. Not about them exactly. About me. About how long I had slept beside my own sadness. How long I had let the room hold a version of me who was constantly bracing for silence. I put on clean sheets, opened the window, let the air move, and for the first time in a long time, the room felt less like a memorial. It felt like a place I could return to. That was not small. Sometimes the soul begins preparing for reunion by making your own life livable again. Because reunion is not supposed to rescue you from a life you abandoned. It is supposed to meet you inside a life you have reclaimed. That means the field must change. Your room, your routines, your emotional patterns, your digital space, your conversations, your relationship with memory, your willingness to let the past be honored, but no longer enthroned. And this is where many people misunderstand reunion energy. They think if reunion is near, they should only be focusing on the other person. Are they feeling me? Are they coming back? Are they awakening? Are they about to reach out? But sacred reunion does not only ask, are they moving towards you? It asks, is your field ready to receive without repeating the old pain? That question is deeper, because if they return tomorrow, would your life have room for a different dynamic? Or would the old environment pull both of you back into the same pattern? Would you answer from peace? Or from fear? Would your body trust the new energy? Or immediately brace for the old wound? Would you be able to speak honestly? Or would you shrink again just to keep the connection calm? These are not easy questions, but clearing begins preparing you for them. Every object you move, every old message you release, every conversation you stop entertaining, every routine you change, every corner of your life you reclaim, sends a message to your nervous system. We are not living in the old timeline anymore, and the body needs that message. The body does not heal only through thoughts. It heals through repeated signals of safety. A clean room, a quiet phone, a boundary honored, a drawer cleared, a playlist changed, a morning routine that does not begin with checking for someone else's energy. These small things teach the body that life can continue without being organized around absence. And when the body begins feeling safer, reunion energy can be met differently. Not as a desperate rescue. Not as proof that you were finally worth choosing. Not as permission to abandon yourself again. But as a meeting. A real one. Between two energies that have been changed by separation. That is why the clearing phase can feel so intense. It is not just housekeeping. It is spiritual preparation through ordinary human actions. You may suddenly feel called to rearrange furniture because the old layout still holds your grief. You may delete a conversation because rereading it keeps your heart tied to a version of them that no longer exists. You may stop wearing something because it belongs to a season where you were waiting more than living. You may unfollow certain accounts because they keep feeding longing instead of healing. You may distance yourself from people who constantly pull you back into old emotional roles. It all matters. The physical, the emotional, the digital, the relational, the energetic. The field is being cleared. And yes, sometimes that clearing makes you feel lonely. Because once the old energy leaves, there is space. And space can feel empty before it feels sacred. You might look around after clearing and feel strange, like you removed the reminders. But now the room is too quiet, like you created space, but you do not know what is coming to fill it. That is normal. Do not rush to fill the space. Do not panic because the emptiness feels unfamiliar. Empty space is not always absence. Sometimes it is invitation. Sometimes it is the first sign that your life is no longer crowded with what cannot come forward with you. Sometimes it is heaven making room before your eyes can see what is being prepared. I remember sitting in that newly cleaned room and feeling both peaceful and unsettled. Peaceful because the heaviness had lifted. Unsettled because the space made the future feel closer. That sounds strange, but it is true. When you remove old energy, you can feel movement more clearly. The room becomes quieter. Your intuition becomes louder. Your body stops being overstimulated by reminders. And in that quiet, you may sense the reunion energy more strongly. Not because you are chasing it, because you finally have enough space to feel what is real. That is the purpose of clearing. Not to force reunion. Not to manipulate energy. Not to prove you are ready. But to stop living surrounded by emotional noise that keeps you connected to the past version of the bond. If reunion is near, it cannot be built on the same cluttered field that held the separation wound. The field has to breathe. You have to breathe. Your spirit has to know there is room now. Room for truth. Room for maturity. Room for a conversation that does not collapse into old fear. Room for love that does not require self-abandonment. Room for a version of you who can receive without becoming desperate. That room begins with small acts. Throwing away the receipt you kept for no reason. Deleting the screenshot that only reopens the ache. Changing the blanket you cried under. Moving the chair where you sat waiting. Cleaning the mirror you avoided looking into. Opening the window. Letting fresh air enter. These are not random. They are rituals of return. You are returning to your own life. And strangely, that return may be exactly what brings reunion energy closer. Because real reunion is not attracted to the version of you who abandoned yourself waiting. It meets the version of you who has come back home. So if you have been clearing things lately without knowing why, do not dismiss it. Your spirit may be preparing the environment before the event. Your body may be making space before your mind has proof. Your soul may be removing emotional residue so that when movement arrives, you can recognize it from a steadier place. And once the field starts clearing, old memories often return one last time, not to pull you backward, to show you they no longer have the same power. That is where the next chapter begins. Lesson of this chapter. Sometimes the urge to clear your space is your soul preparing for a new emotional field. You may not be just cleaning. You may be removing old energy, old attachments, old reminders, and old emotional hooks so your spirit can breathe again. Before reunion can feel different outside you, the field often has to become different around you. Part 5 memories returned, but they did not hurt the same way. There is a strange moment in healing when a memory comes back, and you realize it no longer has the same power over your body. It still touches you. It still means something. It still knows exactly where to land. But it does not destroy the whole day anymore. That was one of the first signs I almost missed. For a long time, memories felt dangerous. A song could ruin me. A certain street could make my stomach drop. A smell could pull me backward, so fast I would feel like I had stepped out of the present and back. Into a version of myself I was still trying to survive. Even small things had too much power. The sound of a notification, the shape of a message bubble, a phrase they used to say, a place we passed once, a color they wore, a time of night when their silence used to feel heavier than usual. It is strange how heartbreak turns ordinary details into emotional landmines. You are living your life, trying to be normal, trying to buy groceries, trying to answer emails, trying to look like someone who is fine, and then one memory appears. Not politely, not gently. It arrives through the body. Your chest tightens first, then the throat, then the stomach. Then suddenly you are remembering everything. The beginning, the warmth, the eye contact, the moment you thought, "This is different." The moment you felt their energy before you had language for it. The moment you believed the connection was leading somewhere safe. And then the memory changes. It brings the silence with it, the distance, the confusion, the waiting, the way your body learned to brace for absence. For a long time, that is what memories did to me. They did not simply remind me. They pulled me under. I could be having a decent day, and then a song would come on in the car. Not even one of the obvious songs. Just a song with the same emotional texture. And suddenly my hands would tighten around the steering wheel. I would keep driving, but inside I was gone. Back in the old room. Back in the old feeling. Back in the old question. Did they feel it too? That question haunted so many memories. Not the memory itself. The uncertainty inside it. Did they feel what I felt when the eye contact got quiet? Did they know the moment something shifted? Did they understand how deeply their silence landed in me? Did they ever sit somewhere alone and remember me with the same ache? That is the part that makes memory painful after separation. It is not only remembering what happened. It is remembering what you never got to know. But then slowly, something changed. The memories still came back. Sometimes unexpectedly. Sometimes at the worst possible time. Sometimes when I thought I was finally done thinking about them. But they started landing differently. Not always. Not perfectly. Healing is not that clean. Some memories still hurt. Some days still surprised me. There were moments when I thought I was stronger than I was. And then one old photo or one familiar phrase would bring tears to my eyes before I could stop them. But underneath that, something was shifting. The memories were no longer always taking me backward. Sometimes they were returning to be released. That is a different kind of memory. A memory that comes back not to trap you, but to show you the charge is leaving. I remember one afternoon sitting in my car after running errands. I had not been thinking about them. Not consciously. I was tired in that ordinary way you get after being around too much noise. I started the car. A song came on. And there it was. A memory. Not dramatic. Not the biggest one. Just a small moment. Their face turned slightly toward mine. The way their voice softened when they said something honest. The quiet between us that felt full instead of awkward. For a second, I felt the old ache. I felt that familiar pull in my chest. But then, I did not collapse. I did not reach for my phone. I did not start building a story around the memory. I did not ask whether it meant they were coming back. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, engine running, music low, and I let myself remember. That was new. Just letting the memory exist without chasing it. I let it move through my body. I let the tenderness come. I let the sadness come. Then I noticed something I had not felt before. There was peace beside the sadness. Not instead of it. Beside it. That surprised me. Because I used to think peace meant the memory would stop hurting completely. But sometimes peace means the memory can hurt without controlling you. Read that slowly. Peace does not always mean absence of pain. Sometimes peace means the pain no longer has authority. That day in the car, I realized the memory was no longer a command. It was not telling me to go back. It was not telling me to check. It was not telling me to reopen a wound just because something had once been beautiful. It was simply showing me that something real had happened, and that I had survived the ending of it. There was grief in that, but also dignity. I think this is one of the most important signs that reunion energy is shifting closer. Old memories return, but they do not hurt the same way. They come back softer, more complete, less like a hook, more like a review, as if your soul is looking through the past one last time. Not to live there, but to integrate what it meant. You begin remembering the whole connection. Not only the beautiful parts, not only the painful parts, the whole thing. The tenderness and the inconsistency, the eye contact and the confusion, the spiritual pull and the nervous system exhaustion, the moments that felt destined, and the moments that taught you why destiny cannot be built on self-abandonment. That kind of remembering is healing, because in the early stages, memory is selective. Your wounded heart remembers the best parts when loneliness gets loud. It remembers the warmth, the first messages, the chemistry, the way they made you feel chosen for a moment. And then your fear remembers the worst parts, the silence, the disappearance, the unanswered questions, the emotional whiplash. But as your energy begins balancing, you stop splitting the story into fantasy or pain. You begin seeing it as a soul chapter, complicated, human, meaningful, unfinished in some ways, but no longer able to imprison you. And maybe that is what has been happening to you lately. Maybe memories have been returning out of nowhere. A dream, a song, a place, an old photo, a scent that pulls something up from deep in the body. Maybe you thought, why am I thinking about this again? Does this mean I am not healed? Does this mean I still want them back? Does this mean reunion is near? The answer may be layered. It may not be only one thing. Memories returning does not always mean you are stuck. Sometimes it means the emotional charge is being processed. Sometimes it means your body is checking whether the wound still controls you. Sometimes it means your spirit is preparing to meet the connection differently. Because if reunion is near, you cannot meet it while the past is still unintegrated. You cannot meet it while one memory still has the power to make you abandon your peace. You cannot meet it while every tender moment pulls you into fantasy, and every painful moment pulls you into fear. Your spirit begins bringing memories back so you can see them from a steadier place. Not to punish you, not to reopen everything, to mature the meaning. That is why some memories may feel oddly gentle now. You may hear a song that once broke you, and instead of crying immediately, you feel quiet. You may see an old message and notice not only what they said, but how anxious you were when you received it. You may look at a photo and remember the sweetness, but also the cost. You may pass a place connected to them and feel sadness, but your body keeps moving. That matters. It means memory is no longer stronger than your presence. I remember finding an old picture I had forgotten to delete. It was not even a perfect photo. A little blurry. Bad lighting. The kind of photo that should not carry much emotional weight. But it did. For a moment, I felt the old version of me rise. The one who wanted to analyze their expression. The one who wanted to ask whether that moment had meant as much to them. The one who wanted to make the photo into proof. Proof that it was real. Proof that I mattered. Proof that I had not imagined the depth. Then something softer came in. I looked at the photo and thought, I was trying so hard to feel safe there. That sentence changed the memory. It was not only romantic anymore. It was honest. I could see my own nervous system inside the picture. I could see the hope, the tenderness, the tension, the way I was already holding my breath emotionally, even in moments that looked beautiful. And that kind of seeing freed me, not from caring, from illusion. Because when memories return during healing, they often return with new information. Not information about them, information about you, who you were then, what you needed, what you ignored, what you hoped would change, what your body already knew, what your spirit was trying to tell you before your heart was ready to listen. That is the difference between being haunted and being shown. At first, memories haunt you. Later, they teach you. And before reunion energy can become healthy, Memories must become teachers instead of traps. A reunion that approaches through alignment cannot be built on the old fantasy. It cannot be built on only remembering the moments that felt magical. It has to include truth. The real truth. What worked? What hurt? What was sacred? What was immature? What was love? What was fear? What was timing? What was avoidance? What was connection? What was attachment? That kind of honesty prepares you. Because if they return, or if reunion energy moves closer in any form, you will not meet it from the same emotional blindness. You will not see one soft moment and forget every lesson. You will not hear one apology and abandon your boundaries. You will not mistake familiarity for transformation. You will be able to ask, is this different? Is this grounded? Is this safe in the body? Can this connection hold truth now? Can I remain myself here? Those questions are not cold. They are sacred protection. They are what make reunion possible without repetition. And this is where memories returning can become a sign of readiness. Not because every memory means the person is coming back tomorrow. Not because every dream means contact is imminent. But because your relationship with the past is changing. You can remember without drowning. You can feel without chasing. You can miss without surrendering your center. You can honor the connection without reopening the wound. That is a different frequency. A reunion frequency. A field where the past has been integrated enough that it no longer dictates the future. I know the word reunion can make the heart jump, especially when the spirit already feels restless. But listen carefully. A near reunion does not always announce itself through excitement. Sometimes it announces itself through emotional neutrality, through the strange calm of remembering without collapsing, through the ache becoming tenderness, through the past losing its power to pull you backward, through memories returning one final time to ask, are you still controlled by this? And you may realize, not completely, not like before. That is progress. That is preparation. That is your spirit saying, we can meet what comes next from a different place now. There may still be tears. There may still be softness. There may still be one memory that catches you off guard and makes you sit down for a minute. That does not mean you failed. It means you are human. The goal is not to become numb. The goal is to become free enough that memory does not decide your future for you. You can love the memory and not live inside it. You can miss the person and not return to self-abandonment. You can feel the old beauty and still require a new truth. That is the emotional maturity reunion requires. So if memories have been returning lately, especially after a season of clearing, restlessness, and inner movement, do not assume you are going backward. Ask what kind of memory it is. Does it make you desperate or reflective? Does it pull you into chasing or help you understand? Does it reopen the wound or show you how much less the wound controls you? Does it make you want the old version back or prepare you to meet a different version of the connection? The answer is in your body. Your body will tell you whether the memory is a hook or an integration. A hook tightens you into panic. Integration softens you into truth. A hook makes you reach for proof. Integration lets you breathe. A hook says, go back. Integration says, look how far you have come. And maybe that is what the memories are doing now. Not pulling you backward, showing you distance, showing you growth, showing you that the past can still matter without being in charge. And when your reaction changes, the signs around you often become stronger. Not because you are obsessing more, because your field is clearer. You can finally notice synchronicity without using it as emotional medicine. That is where the next chapter begins. Lesson of this chapter: when memories return without taking your peace, Your spirit may be preparing to meet the connection from a different place. A memory coming back does not always mean you are stuck. Sometimes it means the emotional charge is leaving. When you can remember without chasing, feel tenderness without collapsing, and honor the past without reopening the wound, your energy is no longer living in the old cycle. Part 6: Synchronicities increased because the timeline is moving. I used to think signs only appeared when I was desperate for proof. And honestly, for a while that was true. I was looking for them everywhere. Numbers, songs, names, initials, dreams. Anything that could make the silence feel less empty. Anything that could convince me the connection still had movement when the physical world looked completely still. I would see 1111 and immediately wonder if they were thinking about me. I would hear their name in a random conversation and feel my whole body pause. I would dream of them and wake up with my chest heavy, trying to decide whether the dream was spiritual, or just my nervous system replaying what it could not resolve. Back then, signs did not always bring peace. Sometimes they brought panic. They made me check, search, decode, wait. They made me turn my healing into a detective story. And that is exhausting. Spiritual signs are beautiful, until your wound starts using them to keep you trapped. That was the part one had to learn the hard way. A sign can be real, and still be misread by a heart that is desperate for relief. A number can appear, and your fear can turn it into pressure. A dream can come, and your attachment can turn it into a command. A name can repeat, and your nervous system can use it as permission to reopen the wound. I did that more than once. I saw signs and immediately made them about reunion. Not healing, not alignment, not preparation, just reunion. Are they coming back? Are they awakening? Is this the moment? Is this the confirmation? But later, after the worst pain softened, after I stopped needing every sign to rescue me, the synchronicities started feeling different. They became less frantic, less sharp, less like emotional bait, more like quiet confirmation, more like something in the unseen was moving, but not asking me to chase it. That shift surprised me, because I expected signs to become louder before reunion energy approached. More dramatic, more impossible, more obvious. But sometimes, when the timeline is moving, the signs become calmer. They still appear, sometimes more often, but they no longer throw you out of your body. They do not make you feel like you have to act immediately. They feel like small taps on the shoulder, soft reminders, quiet markers, not commands. I remember one morning when this became clear to me. I had slept badly, but not in the old anxious way. It was more like my body had been processing something all night. I woke up before the alarm and lay there for a moment, listening to the room. No message, no dramatic dream I could fully remember. Just a feeling, a strange sense that something had shifted while I was sleeping. I got up slowly, made coffee, stood in the kitchen with bare feet on the cold floor, holding the mug with both hands because the warmth felt grounding. And then I saw the time. 11:11. The old version of me would have grabbed onto it, made it mean something immediately. Opened my phone, checked for signs, looked for their name. But that morning, I just stood there. The coffee smelled strong. The room was quiet. The number glowed on the stove clock. And I felt calm, not indifferent, not numb, calm. The thought that came was not, they're coming back today. It was, stay aligned. That was different. That was cleaner. And it stayed with me. Because signs feel different when you stop using them as emotional medicine. They stop being proof that someone else is moving. and become reminders that you are being positioned. That does not mean the reunion is not near. It means your relationship with reunion is changing. You are no longer asking the universe to send you proof because you cannot tolerate uncertainty. You are learning to feel movement without becoming unstable. That is a sign of growth. And maybe this has been happening to you too. Maybe the synchronicities increased recently, but they do not feel exactly like they used to. Maybe you keep seeing repeated numbers. 1111, 222, 333, 444. Maybe their name appears in places you were not searching. Maybe a song comes on at the exact moment you were thinking of letting go. Maybe you hear a phrase from a stranger that answers a question you had only asked silently. Maybe you dream of them, but the dream does not leave you devastated anymore. Maybe one specific initial keeps appearing, but instead of pulling you backward, it makes you pause. Maybe you keep feeling guided toward a place, a conversation, a change, a decision. Not forcefully, subtly. Like life is arranging itself in small details before the bigger moment arrives. That is often how timelines move. Not all at once. Not with fireworks. Not with a door suddenly bursting open. Sometimes the timeline moves through tiny rearrangements. A dream that clears something. A sign that steadies you. A conversation that makes you realize you are no longer who you were. A sudden urge to clear your space. A memory returning without destroying you. A number appearing when you are calmer than expected. A name showing up after you stop chasing it. These are not always random, but they are also not always instructions to act. That distinction matters. When synchronicities increase, the wounded self wants to do something. Text. Check. Control. Predict. Force meaning. But the aligned self listens differently. It asks, what is this confirming inside me? Not, how can I use this to control the outcome? There is a huge difference between receiving a sign and using a sign. Receiving a sign feels humble. You notice. You breathe. You let it deepen your awareness. Using a sign feels anxious. You grab it. Interpret it aggressively. Make it carry the weight of your entire emotional survival. I used to use signs. I will admit that. I used them to avoid feeling the silence. I used them to delay grief. I used them to tell myself the story was not over when my body was still addicted to the old hope. And then I wondered why the signs made me more anxious. Now I understand. It was not always the sign creating anxiety. It was my relationship to the sign. I wanted certainty from something that was only meant to bring awareness. I wanted a timeline from something that was only meant to say, fais attention. I wanted proof of their return from something that was also asking me, are you ready to meet anything differently this time? That question is uncomfortable, because if reunion is near, the real sign is not only what appears around you, it is what has changed inside you. Can you see 1111 without spiraling? Can you hear their name without abandoning your peace? Can you dream of them without turning the whole day into a waiting room? Can you feel their energy and still remain rooted in your own body? Can you sense movement without chasing it? That is where the confirmation becomes deeper. The synchronicities may increase because the timeline is moving, but your steadiness determines how clearly you can receive them. If the signs make you panic, slow down. Do not shame yourself. Just slow down. Come back to your body. Ask what the sign awakened. Ask whether it is guiding you forward or pulling you into the old pattern. Ask whether it strengthens your peace or makes you desperate. Because a real reunion timeline does not need you to lose yourself in the signs before it arrives. It does not need obsession. It does not need you to become a spiritual detective. It does not need you to force meaning from every detail until your nervous system is exhausted. A real reunion timeline asks for alignment. presence, discernment, emotional maturity, the ability to feel something sacred without making it a reason to abandon yourself. I remember another sign that stayed with me. It was a name, not even their exact name, a variation of it. I heard it while standing in line somewhere, tired and distracted. Months earlier, that would have sent me into a spiral. I would have gone home and searched for meanings. I would have wondered if it was a message from their higher self. I would have checked my phone a dozen times. But this time, I just smiled softly. Not because I thought it meant they were coming back immediately, but because I felt the difference in myself. The name still touched something, but it did not take me away from myself. That was the sign inside the sign. My reaction had changed. And when your reaction changes, the timeline around you can move differently. Because you are no longer meeting the unseen from panic. You are meeting it from awareness. That is when synchronicities become cleaner. They may appear around your healing choices. You set a boundary, then see a repeated number. You choose not to check, then hear a song that feels like confirmation. You finally release an old object, then dream of a door opening. You stop chasing closure, then signs begin appearing without the same emotional heaviness. These moments are subtle, but they matter. They suggest your energy is no longer stuck in the old cycle. You are not trying to drag reunion toward you. You are becoming the version of yourself who can recognize whether reunion is truly aligned. That is a very different frequency. And maybe this is why your signs have increased lately. Not because you are supposed to panic. Not because you are supposed to force contact. Not because every number is a countdown, but because the field is moving. Your field. Their field. The connection field. The timeline around the lesson, the healing, the possible return. Something is shifting, and your spirit is noticing the movement through symbols before your life shows the event. That is what synchronicity often does. It gives the soul a language during the gap. The gap between inner knowing and outer proof. The gap between energy and manifestation. The gap between sensing movement and seeing movement. That gap can test you, because the mind wants evidence. The wound wants reassurance. The heart wants the reunion now. But the spirit knows timing has to be clean. It knows that if something returns too soon, before the old pattern has dissolved, the reunion can become repetition. So the signs come first, not to make you chase, to help you stay awake, to help you stay aligned while the unseen moves, to remind you that stillness is not always stagnation. Sometimes stillness is arrangement. Sometimes silence is preparation. Sometimes the absence of visible proof is not the absence of movement. I know that can be hard to trust, especially if you have been disappointed before. You may think, I have seen signs before and nothing happened. I have dreamed before and they did not come back. I have felt movement before and still ended up alone. That fear is valid. Signs can be painful when expectations attach to them. So this time read them differently. Do not ask every sign to promise an outcome. Ask every sign to bring you back to alignment. When you see the number, ask, what is this reminding me to trust? When you hear the name, ask, can I stay centered while feeling this? When you dream of them, ask, what emotion is being processed? When an initial appears, ask, is this a trigger, a marker, or a confirmation? When your body feels restless, ask, am I being pulled backward or prepared forward? This way, the signs become part of your healing instead of fuel for obsession. And from that place, if reunion is near, you will be able to meet it more clearly. Not as someone starving for proof. Not as someone who needs the return to validate the pain. Not as someone willing to forget every lesson at the first sign of tenderness. But as someone awake. Someone grounded. Someone who can feel the sacredness of the connection without losing the self that separation helped rebuild. That is what makes this stage powerful. The synchronicities may be increasing, but the real miracle is that you are not reacting the same way. The universe may feel strangely timed, but you are not as easily controlled by timing. The reminders may be everywhere, but you are learning to let them guide you without dragging you backward. That is how you know the timeline is moving in a healthier way. Not because the signs are louder, because you are steadier. And when you become steadier, heaven can show you more without your wound taking over the interpretation. So if the numbers, names, songs, dreams, initials, and emotional waves have been increasing lately, pause before you panic. Do not turn every sign into pressure. Let it be a reminder. Something is moving. Stay aligned. Keep your field clear. Do not return to old behavior just because the energy feels familiar. The signs are not asking you to chase the reunion. They are asking you to be ready for it. And even with signs increasing, the real confirmation will come from what is changing inside you. That is where the next chapter begins. Lesson of this chapter: signs become clearer when you stop needing them to rescue you. Synchronicities may increase when a reunion timeline begins moving closer, but they are not commands to chase. They are reminders to stay aligned, grounded, and aware. And when the signs no longer make you panic, your spirit may be ready to receive what is approaching from a different place. Part 7: You are no longer the version who would repeat the same pain. I noticed something had changed when the idea of going back to the old dynamic no longer felt romantic. Not the person, not the soul connection, not the tenderness, the dynamic. There is a difference. For a long time, I thought missing someone meant I wanted everything back. The messages, the closeness, the familiar energy, the way my heart would lift when their name appeared, the way my whole body could soften from one small sign of warmth. But healing made me more honest. I did not want everything back. I wanted the love without the confusion, the connection without the anxiety, the eye contact without the disappearing afterward, the spiritual pull without the emotional starvation, the tenderness without the waiting room. And that realization changed something in me. Because before, when I felt their energy, I would immediately begin bargaining with myself. Maybe it would be different this time. Maybe I could be more patient. Maybe I could be less emotional. Maybe I expected too much. Maybe if I stayed softer, quieter, easier, they would feel safe enough to choose me fully. That was the old version of me speaking. The version who thought love meant adjusting herself until someone else could finally stay. The version who thought being understanding meant accepting emotional uncertainty. The version who could call anxiety chemistry because the intensity felt too sacred to question. But after the separation, after the crying, after the silence, after the restless nights where my body felt something moving before life confirmed anything, I could not lie to myself the same way. Something inside me had grown tired of surviving what I once called destiny. And maybe you are feeling that too. You still feel them. You still sense the connection. You still have moments where your heart softens when a memory returns. But the thought of going back to the same pattern, the same silence, the same inconsistency, the same emotional guessing game, does not feel exciting anymore. It feels heavy, almost exhausting before it even begins. That heaviness is not bitterness. It is discernment. It is your spirit remembering the cost. Because there is a version of you who once would have accepted the return at any price. One message, one apology, one soft sentence, one "I've missed you." And suddenly, every lesson might have dissolved in your body. You might have forgotten the nights you cried, forgotten the way you waited, forgotten the way your nervous system lived on edge, forgotten how small you became trying not to ask for too much. Not because you were weak, because you were starving for clarity from someone who gave you just enough hope to keep your heart open. But now, something is different. You may still want reunion, but not the reunion that requires you to betray yourself. You may still love them, but not enough to disappear again. You may still feel the pull, but the pull no longer has permission to override your peace. That is a powerful shift, a quiet one, the kind nobody sees. People around you may only notice that you are calmer, more distant, harder to impress, less reactive. They may not know that inside, you have been having a private conversation with your own soul. A conversation that sounds like, I can miss them and still not accept confusion. I can love them and still require consistency. I can feel reunion energy and still refuse the old wound. I can want something sacred without letting it cost me myself. That is maturity. That is the version of you reunion needs. Not the version who is perfect. Not the version who never gets triggered. Not the version who has no fear left. A human version. A tender version. But a version with a spine now. A version who knows what it felt like to abandon herself, and does not want to live there again. I remember one night when this became real for me. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, phone beside me, room half dark. There had been a strange wave of restlessness all day. Not panic. Not sadness. Just that charged feeling, like life was holding its breath. I had seen signs too. A repeated number. Their name in passing. A song that carried the emotional color of the connection. And for a moment I thought, what if they reach out? That thought used to make my whole body shake. There was a time when I would have lived inside that possibility for hours. I would have imagined the conversation, rehearsed what I would say, wondered whether I should respond quickly or wait, wondered whether they had changed, wondered whether this was finally the moment everything came back together. But that night, something else happened. The thought came, and then another thought followed. Very quietly, what would they be returning to? That question stopped me. Not, are they coming back? Not, do they miss me? Not, is reunion near? But, what would they be returning to? Would they be returning to the version of me who would accept half-truths because the connection felt deep? Would they be returning to someone who still needed their attention to feel chosen? Would they be returning to the same emotional availability they once received from me without giving the same presence back? Would they be returning to an open door with no boundaries? Or would they be returning to someone different? Someone softer but wiser. Someone loving but honest. Someone who can hear an apology without instantly offering access. Someone who can feel chemistry without ignoring consistency. Someone who can say, I missed you, and still ask, what has changed? That question matters. What has changed? Not as an accusation, not as punishment, as truth. Because reunion is not sacred simply because two people reconnect. Reunion becomes sacred when the old pattern is no longer allowed to run the relationship. A message is not transformation. A return is not automatically healing. A conversation is not proof of readiness. Someone can come back because they miss your energy and still not be ready to honor your heart. Someone can feel the connection and still not have the maturity to hold it. Someone can regret losing you and still repeat the behavior that broke your trust. That is why your transformation matters. Not to control them, not to punish them, to protect the field, your peace, your nervous system, your future. Because if reunion is near, the question is not only whether they return. The question is whether you are still available for the same pain. And if you are listening closely, you may realize the answer is no. Not in a hard, cold way. In a quiet, sacred way. No. No to guessing games. No to emotional crumbs. No to being someone's spiritual mirror while they refuse to look. No to waiting endlessly for potential. No to confusing distance with depth. No to making yourself smaller, so love feels less demanding to someone unprepared. No to the version of connection that makes your body feel like it has to earn safety. That no is not rejection of love. It is devotion to alignment. And sometimes your restlessness increases right after this shift because your spirit knows the field has changed. You are not the same energetic match for the old dynamic. That is why the old pattern cannot land inside you the way it used to. You may still feel the ache, but you do not obey it the same way. You may still feel nostalgia, but you do not romanticize it as quickly. You may still wonder about reunion, but you no longer want a return that recreates the wound. That is growth. Real growth. Messy growth. The kind you earn through nights no one witnessed. Through deleted paragraphs. Through not checking. Through crying and still not reaching out. Through choosing silence when silence used to feel like punishment. Through learning that peace is not boring. Peace is safety. And after a connection that kept your nervous system in uncertainty, safety becomes sacred. I used to think I wanted them back more than anything. Then one day, I realized I wanted peace more. That scared me at first, because part of me thought choosing peace meant the connection had lost meaning. But it had not. It meant I had found meaning in myself again. It meant love was no longer allowed to be an excuse for self-abandonment. It meant I could still honor the soul connection without worshiping the suffering. That is when reunion energy becomes cleaner. Because the spirit is no longer screaming, "Please come back so I can feel okay." It begins whispering, "If this returns, let it return in truth." There is a huge difference. One comes from lack. The other comes from alignment. One is the wounded self asking to be rescued. The other is the awakened self asking for something that can actually hold what has been healed. And maybe this is why you feel restless now. Not because you are still stuck in the old cycle, but because you are standing at the edge of a new one. Your spirit knows something is moving, but your spirit also knows you cannot meet it from the version of yourself who tolerated too much. So everything inside you is adjusting. Your standards, your body, your intuition, your emotional reflexes, your relationship with hope, even your relationship with their energy. Before, feeling them might have made you panic. Now it makes you pause. Before, a sign might have made you chase. Now it makes you listen. Before, a memory might have made you forget the pain. Now it helps you remember the whole truth. That is not regression. That is readiness. Readiness does not always feel like confidence. Sometimes readiness feels like being nervous but clear, open but careful, hopeful but grounded, soft but no longer willing to be emotionally reckless with yourself. You may still have moments where you wonder, would I be strong enough if they came back? Would I fall into the same pattern? Would I forget what I learned? Those questions are honest. Do not shame them. They show you are not trying to romanticize reunion blindly anymore. You are asking from wisdom. You are asking because you know love without self-awareness can become another wound. And maybe the answer is not that you will be perfect. Maybe the answer is that you will be present. Present enough to notice your body. Present enough to hear your intuition. Present enough to pause before agreeing to something that does not feel safe. Present enough to let someone show change through consistency, not just emotion. Present enough to require truth. That is all you need at first. Presence, not perfection. Because the version of you who would repeat the same pain was unconscious inside the cycle. They did not know how much they were tolerating. They did not know how much they were shrinking. They did not know anxiety had become familiar. But you know now. And once you know, you cannot unknow. You may be tempted. You may feel softness. You may feel longing. You may even feel the old pull for a moment. But somewhere inside you, there is a new voice. A quieter voice. A steadier voice. A voice that says, "We are not going back to survive love." That voice is your alignment. And if reunion is near, that voice will matter more than any sign. More than any dream. More than any synchronicity. More than any sudden message. Because signs may tell you movement is happening, but your inner standard determines whether the movement becomes healing or repetition. So ask yourself gently, would you accept the same inconsistency now? Would you still call anxiety chemistry? Would you still abandon your peace just to feel chosen again? Would you still mistake their potential for their presence? Would you still silence your needs to keep the connection from shaking? If the answer is no, even a trembling no, then something in you has changed. And that change is one of the clearest signs that reunion energy may be approaching differently. Not because you are forcing it, not because you are manifesting through desperation, but because your field no longer matches the old wound. You are becoming someone who can meet love without disappearing. Someone who can feel destiny without surrendering discernment. Someone who can allow reunion, but not at the cost of self-betrayal. That is the version of you who can stand in front of a returning soul and not collapse into the past. That is the version who can say, "I feel this too, but I need truth now." That is the version who can receive a message and not immediately hand over the keys to their nervous system. That is the version who can recognize whether the energy has changed, or whether only the longing has returned. And that version of you was not born easily. They were born from the silence, from the waiting, from the restlessness, from the nights you chose yourself with shaking hands, from the memories that returned and did not destroy you, from the signs that appeared and did not control you, from the heartbreak that taught you the difference between deep connection and safe connection. So do not underestimate this shift. The fact that you no longer want the old pain is not small. It is sacred. It means your spirit has learned. It means your nervous system is healing. It means your heart is no longer willing to call suffering proof of love. And when your frequency changes like that, you may begin feeling their energy differently too. Not as a hook, not as a command, not as something that owns you, but as movement, as a signal, as something approaching the edge of your awareness, while your spirit watches from a steadier place. And that is where the next chapter begins. Lesson of this chapter: a real reunion requires a version of you that no longer mistakes suffering for destiny. You may still love them. You may still feel the connection. But if you are no longer willing to repeat the same confusion, waiting, and self-abandonment, your field has changed. And when your frequency changes, you may start feeling their energy differently too. Part 8: you suddenly feel their energy, but it no longer owns you. I remember feeling them one night after months of silence. Not thinking about them, feeling them. There is a difference. Thinking feels mental. It has words, images, memories, a sequence. You remember a conversation, a place, a message, a look. But feeling someone's energy is different. It arrives before the thought. It moves through the body first. A sudden warmth in the chest, a pressure behind the ribs, a strange heaviness in the room, a wave of emotion that does not seem fully yours, a name rising inside you without warning. It does not ask permission. It just appears. That night, I was not doing anything spiritual. No candles, no meditation, no journaling, no dramatic attempt to connect. I was sitting on the floor beside my bed, folding laundry badly, the way you do when your hands are moving, but your mind is not fully present. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to scare me. But by then, the silence had changed. It did not feel like punishment anymore. It felt like space. And then, suddenly, they were there. Not physically, not in a way I could prove, but something in the atmosphere shifted. My body recognized it before my mind could argue. My hands stopped moving. The shirt in my lap stayed half folded. My chest tightened, but not like panic. More like something old had brushed against something newly healed. And for a second, I felt them. Their sadness. Or maybe my memory of their sadness. Their presence. Or maybe the energetic imprint of what we had been. It is hard to explain without sounding like you are making it up. But if you have ever been connected to someone deeply, you know, sometimes the body knows the difference between a memory and an energetic wave. A memory usually follows a trigger, a song, a photo, a place, a conversation. But energy can arrive out of nowhere. In the middle of cooking, driving, folding laundry, trying to sleep, standing in a grocery store aisle holding something you do not even remember picking up. And suddenly, your whole system pauses. Like someone unseen said your name. I used to think that meant I had to do something. That was my old pattern. If I felt them, I thought it meant I should reach out. If their energy came close, I thought it meant they were thinking of me. If I woke up with them heavy in my chest, I thought it meant reunion was about to happen immediately. And maybe sometimes energetic sensitivity does mean something is moving. Maybe sometimes you do feel them because their energy is turning toward you. Maybe the bond is active. Maybe the field is shifting. Maybe something in the unseen is preparing a meeting long before either person can explain it. But I had to learn something important. Feeling someone's energy is not always a command. Sometimes it is only contact. Sometimes it is only information. Sometimes it is a wave passing through the connection. Sometimes it is the soul checking whether you can feel without collapsing. That was the difference this time. I felt them, but I did not collapse. I did not reach for my phone. I did not open old messages. I did not search for their name. I did not start building a story around the feeling. I did not say, "This must mean they are coming back tonight." I just sat there, on the floor, with half-folded laundry, one hand resting on my chest, breathing through the wave. That may sound small, but it was not small to me, because there was a time when feeling them would have undone me. It would have pulled me back into the old cycle. The waiting, the checking, the interpretation, the hope, the crash, the shame afterward. But now, the energy came, and I stayed. I stayed with myself. I let their presence move through the room without letting it become the center of my whole nervous system. That is one of the clearest signs that something inside you has shifted. You can feel them, and still remain yours. You can sense the connection, and still not hand it control. You can miss them, and still not abandon the peace you rebuilt after they left. That is not detachment in a cold way. It is not pretending the bond means nothing. It is not shutting your heart down and calling it healing. It is something much more mature. It is the ability to hold connection without losing self. And that ability changes everything. Because before reunion can happen in a healthy way, the energy has to stop owning you. If the connection still controls your choices, if every wave makes you chase, if every dream becomes a reason to reopen the wound, if every feeling of them makes you forget what the old dynamic cost you, then reunion energy can easily become repetition. Not healing. Repetition. A return to the same ache in a slightly different form. But when you can feel them and stay grounded, the field changes. You are no longer meeting the connection from desperation. You are meeting it from presence. That is powerful. And it may feel very strange at first. Because part of you might wonder, does this mean I care less? Does this mean the connection is fading? Does this mean I am becoming cold? No. It means the connection no longer has to hurt you in order to feel real. That is a huge shift. For a long time, pain may have been the proof. The ache proved depth. The longing proved love. The obsession proved destiny. The nervous system activation proved the bond was still alive. But as you heal, your body begins learning another language. A calmer one. A steadier one. A connection can be real without making you panic. A soul bond can be deep without requiring self-abandonment. A reunion can be near without demanding that you chase it into existence. And maybe that is what you are feeling now. Their energy comes in suddenly. But instead of destroying you, it makes you quiet, reflective, aware. You may feel warmth in your chest. You may feel sadness that does not fully belong to you. You may wake up from a vivid dream and sense their presence lingering in the room. You may hear their name internally while doing something completely ordinary. You may feel a sudden emotional wave and think, where did that come from? Then immediately, you know. But this time something is different. You do not spiral the same way. You may cry, but you do not chase. You may miss them, but you do not abandon yourself. You may wonder if they are feeling you too, but you do not make your peace depend on knowing. That is alignment, not perfect certainty, not emotional numbness. Alignment. I remember another night when their energy came through in a dream. The dream was simple. No dramatic reunion. No big speech. No cinematic scene where everything was explained. We were standing across from each other in a hallway. There was soft light behind them. They looked tired. Not cruel. Not distant. Just tired. And in the dream, they said nothing. They only looked at me. The kind of eye contact that carries more than words. When I woke up, my chest was heavy, but not in the old way. Before, a dream like that would have ruined me. I would have spent the whole morning trying to decode it. Was it a message? Was it a visitation? Was it their higher self? Was it my subconscious? Was reunion coming? Should I wait? Should I reach out? But this time, I lay still for a moment and let the dream settle. I did not force meaning onto it. I did not need to know immediately. I placed my hand over my heart and whispered, "If this is moving, let it move in truth." That sentence felt different from my old prayers. My old prayers sounded like longing. Bring them back. Make them understand. Show me if they miss me. Give me proof. But this prayer was quieter, more surrendered. Not passive. Surrendered. If this is moving, let it move in truth. That is the kind of energy that prepares real reunion. Because real reunion cannot be built on fantasy alone. It cannot be built on one person feeling everything and the other person avoiding everything. It cannot be built on you interpreting every energetic wave while ignoring whether the physical reality can hold the connection. Energy matters. But energy is not the whole story. You can feel someone and still require maturity. You can sense their soul and still need honesty from their human self. You can have dreams, signs, warmth, waves, synchronicities, and still know that a real reunion must show up in real choices. Real words. Real consistency. Real accountability. That does not make you less spiritual. It makes you grounded. And grounded spirituality is what protects sacred connections from becoming emotional chaos. I know many people on this path struggle with that. They feel someone's energy and immediately think they have to do something with it. They think feeling means action. But sometimes feeling is preparation. Sometimes the energy comes close so you can learn how to hold it without running toward it. Sometimes the wave arrives so your body can practice staying safe inside connection. Sometimes you are being shown that you can feel deeply without being possessed by what you feel. That is important, because before, the connection may have owned your inner world. Their silence controlled your mood. Their warmth controlled your hope. Their distance controlled your self-worth. Their energy controlled your peace. Now, if reunion is near, your spirit may be testing a new capacity. Can you sense them and still stay centered? Can you feel the pull and still honor your boundaries? Can you miss them and still remain in your own life? Can you let connection exist without turning it into self-abandonment? Those questions are not cold. They are sacred. They are the difference between reunion as healing and reunion as another cycle. Because if they come back and you immediately lose yourself, then the old wound has not fully released its power. But if they come back and you can feel love, tenderness, fear, hope, caution, and truth all at once, without abandoning your center, then something has changed. You have changed. And that may be why their energy feels different lately. Maybe it is not only that they are closer. Maybe it is that you are steadier. The same energetic wave that once would have pulled you under now moves through a body that has learned how to breathe. The same connection that once felt like emotional emergency now feels like quiet awareness. The same soul bond that once made you chase now makes you listen. That is not the bond weakening. That is your nervous system healing. And when your nervous system heals, reunion energy becomes safer to perceive. You can notice the signs without becoming desperate. You can feel the pull without turning it into proof. You can receive the dream without building your whole day around it. You can sense them and still ask, what is my spirit showing me? Not only, what are they feeling? That question matters. Because sometimes when you feel their energy, it may not be about them returning immediately. It may be about your readiness. It may be about your ability to stay grounded while the connection intensifies. It may be about your field becoming strong enough to hold what once overwhelmed you. I remember sitting with that realization and feeling both comforted and sad. Comforted because I was not as powerless as I used to feel. Sad because part of me remembered how much I had suffered before learning this. How many nights I thought feeling them meant I had to reach out. How many mornings I woke up from dreams and let them decide my emotional state. How many signs I turned into instructions. How many times I confused energetic closeness with physical readiness. And maybe you have been there too. You feel them so strongly that it almost feels unfair. You wonder why you can sense someone who is not speaking. You wonder why the connection remains active when the relationship is silent. You wonder whether your spirit is receiving truth, or whether your heart is still trying to keep the story alive. Those questions are valid, and the answer may not be simple. Sometimes it is both. Sometimes the bond is real, and your attachment is still healing. Sometimes the energy is moving, and your wound wants to interpret it too quickly. Sometimes reunion is near, and you are still being asked not to chase. That is the tension. That is the path. You are learning how to feel without forcing, how to sense without spiraling, how to stay open without becoming unstable, how to let the unseen move without demanding immediate proof. This is one of the final stages before a different kind of reunion can happen. Because when energy intensifies, the old self wants control. But the aligned self practices trust. Trust does not mean doing nothing forever. Trust does not mean ignoring reality. Trust means you do not let fear make the first move. You do not let longing write the message. You do not let a wave of energy erase the lessons separation taught you. You wait for truth. You stay present. You allow what is real to become clear. And if reunion is meant to enter physical form, it will not require you to chase it out of fear. It will meet the version of you who can feel it coming and still remain whole. So if you have suddenly been feeling their energy lately, especially after a season of clearing, changing, remembering, and seeing signs, do not panic. Do not immediately assume you are going backward. Do not shame yourself for feeling them, but also do not surrender your peace to the feeling. Sit with it. Breathe. Place your hand on your heart. Ask, is this asking me to chase, or asking me to stay centered? Ask, does this energy bring awareness, or does it trigger the old wound? Ask, can I feel this connection without abandoning myself? The answer will show you where you are. And if the answer is yes, even a trembling yes, then something in your field has shifted. You are no longer being owned by the bond. You are learning to hold it. And that is one of the clearest signs that if reunion is near, it will not only return outside you, it will first feel different inside you. That is where the next chapter begins. Lesson of this chapter: feeling someone's energy is not always a command. Sometimes it is preparation. When you can sense their presence, dream of them, feel emotional waves, or notice their energy without chasing, spiraling, or abandoning yourself, your field has changed. A near reunion does not only show up as external contact. First, it begins to feel different inside you. Part 9 signs a reunion is near, but not like before. I used to think reunion would feel dramatic, like everything would suddenly become obvious. A message at the perfect time, a confession, a door opening, a moment so undeniable that my heart would finally stop asking questions. I imagined reunion as something loud, something that would interrupt the silence and make all the pain make sense at once. But the closer I came to real inner peace, the more I realized something I had not wanted to understand before. A true reunion does not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it approaches quietly, through restlessness, through clearing, through memories returning without destroying you, through dreams that feel different, through signs that no longer make you panic, through your own nervous system becoming steady enough to feel movement without chasing it. That was not the kind of reunion sign I expected. I wanted certainty. I wanted proof. I wanted heaven to make it unmistakable. But spiritual movement often begins in subtle ways. Not because it is weak, because your soul has matured enough not to need chaos to recognize meaning. There was a time when I thought a reunion was near only if I felt desperate, if I could not stop thinking about them, if their name appeared everywhere, if I woke up with my heart racing, if I felt pulled toward them so strongly that I could barely function. I thought intensity meant closeness, but now I see it differently. Sometimes intensity means your wound has been activated. Sometimes obsession means your nervous system is searching for relief. Sometimes the loudest pull is not the most aligned one. A near reunion may feel much calmer than the old cycle, and that calm can confuse you. You might think, why do I feel something coming if I am not desperate anymore? Why do I sense movement, but I do not feel the same panic? Why do I still feel them, but not in a way that owns me? That is exactly the point. If reunion is approaching from a healed field, it will not feel like the old wound returning. It will feel like movement meeting maturity. It will feel like your spirit becoming alert, while your body remains more grounded than before. It will feel like a door is somewhere nearby, but you are no longer standing outside it begging to be let in. That is different. Very different. One of the first signs a reunion may be near is that you feel restless, but not desperate. There is a charged feeling in your body, a sense that something is shifting. You may wake up earlier than usual. You may feel like your life is holding its breath. You may move through your day with this strange inner awareness that something has not arrived yet. But something has changed. And still, you are not chasing the way you used to. That matters. The old cycle made you restless in a frantic way. You needed to check. You needed proof. You needed a message. You needed the silence to end so your body could relax. But this restlessness is different. It may feel uncomfortable, But it does not make you want to abandon yourself. It makes you want to prepare. To clear your room. To tell the truth. To stop tolerating old energy. To become quieter. To listen more carefully. To stop feeding distractions that keep you numb. That kind of restlessness often means your spirit is sensing movement in the field. Not proof yet. Not physical confirmation yet. Movement. Another sign is that you begin clearing old energy without forcing yourself. You may suddenly feel done with things you used to cling to. Old photos. Old screenshots. Old clothes. Old routines. Old conversations. Old spaces that still carry the grief of who you were during separation. You do not clear them to erase the person. You clear them because your spirit cannot breathe in the old atmosphere anymore. That is important. A near reunion does not ask you to live inside a shrine to the past. It asks whether your life has room for something real now. Not the fantasy. Not the old dynamic. Not the version of love that kept you waiting. Something real. Something that can meet the person you have become. I remember cleaning my room during that restless season and realizing I was not trying to forget them. I was trying to stop letting the past occupy every corner of my energy. That realization softened me. It made the clearing feel less like rejection and more like preparation. Another sign is that memories come back, but they do not break you the same way. This one can feel confusing. You might suddenly remember their face, their voice, a conversation you thought you had moved past, a place, a song, the way they looked at you before the distance, and your first reaction might be fear. Oh no, why am I thinking about this again? Am I going backward? Am I still attached? But notice the texture. Does the memory destroy your peace? Or does it simply move through you? Does it make you desperate to reach out? Or does it make you reflective? Does it pull you back into fantasy? Or help you see the connection more honestly? When reunion energy is approaching differently, memories often return for integration. Not punishment. Integration. Your spirit may be reviewing the past, so you do not repeat it unconsciously. You remember the tenderness, but also the confusion. You remember the depth, but also the emotional cost. You remember the moments that felt sacred, but you no longer ignore the moments that made your body feel unsafe. That balanced remembering is a sign of readiness. Because if the person returns and you only remember the beautiful parts, you may fall back into the old pattern. But if you remember the whole truth, you can meet reunion with open eyes. Another sign is that synchronicities increase, but they no longer make you spiral. You may see repeated numbers, their name, their initial, a song, a phrase, a place connected to the connection. But instead of instantly turning those signs into pressure, you feel something quieter. A pause, a breath, a knowing, maybe even a gentle smile. The signs do not feel like emotional bait anymore. They feel like reminders. Stay aligned. Stay present. Do not chase what is meant to meet you in truth. This is one of the clearest differences between the old cycle and a new reunion timeline. Before, signs made you panic. Now, signs make you listen. Before, signs made you obsess. Now, signs make you prepare. Before, signs were used by your wound to avoid grief. Now, signs are used by your spirit to confirm movement without pulling you out of peace. Another sign is that you sense their energy, but it does not own you. You may suddenly feel them at night, during a quiet moment, while driving, while doing something ordinary. You may feel a wave of sadness, warmth, or recognition. You may dream of them and wake up with the dream still sitting in your chest. But instead of reaching for the phone, you breathe. Instead of making the energy a command, you witness it. Instead of asking only, what are they feeling? You ask, what is this showing me? That shift is massive, because reunion energy can intensify before physical contact. But if you turn every energetic wave into action, you may pull yourself back into the old dynamic before the new one has time to form. Feeling them does not always mean you should chase them. Sometimes it means the field is active. Sometimes it means something is being processed between both souls. Sometimes it means your spirit is practicing how to stay centered while connection becomes stronger. That is preparation. Another sign is that you are less attached to the outcome. This one sounds impossible when you are still in the early pain. But it happens gradually. You still care. You still feel. You still wonder. But your entire life no longer depends on whether reunion happens exactly the way your wounded heart once imagined. You may still want the connection, but you want truth more. You may still hope for contact, but you want peace more. You may still feel love, but you no longer want to lose yourself just to experience it. That is not giving up. That is becoming aligned. And sometimes reunion approaches when you stop needing it to rescue you. Because now, if it comes, it can meet you as a whole person. Not as someone starving for proof. Not as someone waiting to be chosen before choosing themselves. Not as someone willing to call any return a blessing, even if it repeats the same pain. Another sign is that you start craving peace more than closure. This is subtle. In the old cycle, you wanted answers. Why did they leave? What did they feel? Why did they go silent? Did the connection mean anything to them? Were you the only one changed? Those questions may still exist, but they no longer rule you the same way. You begin realizing that closure from them is not the only path to peace. You begin finding closure in your own body, in your own choices, in your own honesty, in the way you stop reopening the wound for answers. And when reunion is near, this matters. Because if they return, you do not meet them from the desperate need to make them explain your worth. You meet them from a steadier place, a place that can hear them, without needing them to become the source of your identity. That is emotional freedom. Another sign is that you feel guided toward change. Not only toward them, toward your life. You may feel called to change routines, move differently, speak differently, rest more, pray differently, create something, finish something, leave something, start something. You may feel like the reunion is connected not only to romance, but to your entire timeline shifting. That is often true. A soul reunion is rarely isolated. It affects identity, purpose, environment, boundaries, relationships, the way you see yourself, the way you allow love to enter. So if your restlessness is moving you toward a cleaner, more truthful life, fais attention. That may be part of the preparation. Another sign is that old wounds no longer control your choices the same way. You may still get triggered. You may still feel a little fear. But you recover faster. You pause before reacting. You notice your body. You ask better questions. You do not immediately offer access just because someone touches a familiar ache. You no longer confuse emotional urgency with divine timing. That is one of the strongest signs that reunion can happen differently. Because the old wound was the doorway through which the old cycle kept entering. Once that wound no longer controls you the same way, the dynamic has to change. Either the reunion comes in a new frequency, or it cannot hold your energy the way it used to. That is protection. And maybe the most important sign of all is this. You feel movement without needing proof. Not all the time. You are human. Some days you still want evidence. Some days you still wish the phone would light up. Some days you still want the universe to be clearer. But underneath that, there is a steadier knowing. Something is moving. I do not have to force it. I do not have to chase it. I do not have to abandon myself to prepare for it. I can stay here. I can stay aligned. I can let what is meant for me approach in truth. That kind of knowing is quiet. It does not scream. It does not perform. It does not need to convince everyone around you. It simply sits in the body like a small flame. Still, warm, alive. And maybe that is why you have been restless lately. Not because you are losing your peace. Because your spirit feels the movement of a reunion that is not meant to be like before. Not a reunion that takes you back to the old wound. A reunion that tests whether both souls have changed. A reunion that requires truth. A reunion that asks for presence. A reunion that cannot survive in the field of self-abandonment anymore. So do not mistake quiet readiness for lack of love. Do not mistake calm signs for weak signs. Do not mistake your reduced obsession as proof that the connection is fading. Sometimes the connection feels less chaotic because it is becoming cleaner. Sometimes reunion feels less dramatic because you are no longer addicted to suffering. Sometimes the signs feel softer because your spirit can finally hear whispers. Ask yourself gently, do you feel restless but not desperate? Are you clearing old energy without forcing it? Are memories returning without controlling you? Are signs increasing, but your reaction is steadier? Do you feel their energy without needing to chase? Are you less attached to the outcome than before? Do you crave peace more than closure? Do old wounds have less control over your choices? If yes, something may be moving closer. Not necessarily in the old way. Not necessarily on the timeline your fear demands. But in a field that is different now. A field where reunion can no longer be built on panic. Only alignment. And once you understand what the restlessness means, the final message becomes clear. Lesson of this chapter. A near reunion often feels less like panic, and more like inner movement, clearing, emotional steadiness, and quiet readiness. The signs may be subtle. The energy may be softer. The memories may return without breaking you. And when you feel movement without needing to chase it, your spirit may already know something is approaching. Part 10. Your spirit knows before life confirms it. If you are still here, part of you already knows your restlessness has not been random. Not all of it. Not the strange waking hours. Not the sudden urge to clear your space. Not the memories returning without breaking you the same way. Not the signs that started appearing when you were no longer begging for proof. Not the feeling of their energy brushing against your life, while somehow no longer owning your entire nervous system. Something has been moving, quietly, underneath the visible world, and maybe you have been afraid to admit that. Because admitting you feel movement can feel dangerous after disappointment. You do not want to be wrong again. You do not want to hope too soon. You do not want to call something near, and then sit in silence for another season wondering whether you imagined everything. I understand that fear. Deeply. There were times when I stopped trusting my own intuition because I had confused it with attachment too many times. I thought something was coming, and nothing came. I thought a sign meant contact, and the phone stayed silent. I thought a dream meant reunion, and the day passed like any other day. After enough of that, hope starts feeling like a risk your body does not want to take anymore. So when the restlessness comes now, you may try to shut it down. You may say, "No, I'm not doing this again. I'm not reading into this. I'm not letting myself believe something is close. I've worked too hard for peace to become unstable over a feeling." That caution is not wrong. It is wisdom from a nervous system that has survived too much uncertainty. But there is a difference between rejecting every feeling because you are afraid, and reading the feeling from alignment. That is the whole message. Your restlessness does not mean you should chase. It does not mean you should force contact. It does not mean you should reopen a door that still has not shown you truth. It does not mean you should abandon the peace you fought for just because the energy feels active again. But it may mean something is shifting. It may mean the timeline is moving. It may mean your spirit recognizes a reunion before your physical life has evidence. Not because you are desperate. Not because you are stuck. Not because you are imagining things to avoid grief. But because the soul often senses movement before the mind can explain it. And when that movement gets close, the body becomes restless. Not always frantic. Not always anxious. Sometimes quietly alert. Like the body is listening. Like your life is holding its breath. Like your spirit is standing near a door that has not opened yet, but already knows someone is approaching from the other side. That kind of knowing can be hard to live with, because it does not come with a calendar. It does not always come with a message. It does not arrive with a guarantee you can show someone. It comes as an inner pressure, a change in your sleep, a pull to clear old things, a feeling that old energy no longer belongs around you, a sense that the past is returning in memory, but not to trap you, a knowing that something is close, but not like before. That part matters. Not like before. Because the reunion your spirit is sensing cannot be met from the same wound that once made you suffer. It cannot be met from the version of you who confused silence with a test of loyalty. It cannot be met from the version who treated every small sign as permission to wait endlessly. It cannot be met from the version who made someone else's emotional readiness the center of your entire life. That version of you survived, but they cannot lead the reunion. The version of you who leads now is different. Not perfect, not fearless, not completely healed in every corner, but different. You have seen too much to return blindly. You have felt too much to call confusion romantic forever. You have lost yourself enough to recognize the early signs of self-abandonment. You have cried through enough silence to know that love without truth becomes suffering. So if reunion is near, your spirit is not only saying, they may be coming. It is also saying, stay aligned, stay in your body, stay honest, stay grounded, stay soft, but not available for the same pain. Stay open, but not desperate. Stay loving, but not self-erasing. That is the invitation, not to run toward the reunion, to become steady enough to receive whatever is truly coming. I remember the moment I realized my restlessness was not asking me to chase. It was asking me to prepare. I had spent so many nights confusing movement with urgency. If I felt them, I thought I had to do something. If I saw signs, I thought I had to interpret everything immediately. If memories returned, I thought I was going backward. If my body felt alert, I thought I was anxious again. But slowly the pattern became clear. The restlessness was not pulling me into the old cycle anymore. It was pulling me out of anything that could not come with me. Old emotional clutter. Old people-pleasing. Old fantasies. Old versions of love where I was chosen in moments but abandoned in patterns. Old habits of checking for proof instead of listening for truth. The restlessness began making me clear space. Clear my room. Clear my phone. Clear my energy. Clear my expectations. Clear the part of me that would accept a return just because it returned. That was hard, because in the old wound, any return would have felt like victory. But the awakened self asks deeper questions. Has the energy changed? Has the pattern changed? Has there been accountability? Can truth be spoken? Can peace survive here? Can I stay myself in this connection? Those questions are not barriers to love. They are bridges to a healthier version of it. A reunion without those questions may feel exciting for a moment, but it can become the same wound with a new beginning. and you have already lived that pain. Your spirit knows you cannot go back to survive love. So if you have been restless lately, do not shame yourself. Do not immediately assume you are failing your healing. Do not call yourself delusional for sensing movement. But also do not let the feeling throw you into old behavior. Pause. Breathe. Ask what the restlessness is preparing. Is it asking you to reach out from panic? Or is it asking you to become quieter? Is it asking you to chase proof? Or is it asking you to clear your field? Is it asking you to abandon your standards? Or is it reminding you that the old dynamic cannot enter the new chapter unchanged? Your body will tell you, not always loudly, sometimes through tightness, sometimes through calm, sometimes through the difference between urgency and readiness. Urgency feels like you must do something right now to keep destiny from leaving. Readiness feels like you are being prepared for something that does not require panic to arrive. Urgency drains you. Readiness steadies you. Urgency makes you smaller. Readiness makes you honest. Urgency says, if I do nothing, I will lose them. Readiness says, if this is meant, it can meet me in truth. That is where faith matures. Not faith as waiting forever. Not faith as ignoring reality. Not faith as excusing someone's inconsistency because you saw a sign. Faith as alignment. Faith as the courage to stay open without self-betrayal. Faith as the ability to let the unseen move while you keep living your life. Faith is trusting that what is truly meant for you will not require you to become unrecognizable to receive it. And maybe the reunion your spirit senses is not only with them. Maybe it is also with yourself. The self you lost during the chase. The self you silenced during uncertainty. The self who used to laugh without checking the emotional weather of someone else's distance. The self who could feel deeply but still feel safe. The self who trusted her body before attachment taught her to argue with it. That reunion matters too. In fact, it may be the first reunion. Before the message. Before the meeting. Before the conversation. Before the physical return. Your spirit brings you back to yourself. And from that place, everything changes. If they return, you are not the same. If they do not, you are still not the same. That is power. That is healing. That is the part nobody talks about. The real gift is not only whether someone comes back. The real gift is who you become while learning not to abandon yourself waiting for them. So yes, your restlessness may mean reunion is near. But not the old kind. Not the kind that keeps you starving. Not the kind that makes you trade peace for proximity. Not the kind that uses chemistry to bypass truth. A different kind. A reunion that can only meet you if you remain aligned. A reunion that may begin with energy before it becomes conversation. A reunion that may approach through dreams, signs, memories. An inner movement before the physical door opens. A reunion that asks both souls to arrive changed. And if it is truly near, you do not have to force it. You do not have to chase it. You do not have to beg heaven for proof every hour. You do not have to read every sign until your nervous system collapses. You do not have to turn your life into a waiting room. You only have to stay awake. Stay present. Stay honest. Stay available to truth. Not fantasy. Stay soft enough to receive. And strong enough to discern. Because your spirit may know before life confirms it. Your body may feel the shift before the message comes. Your dreams may sense movement before the conversation happens. Your field may begin clearing before the person appears. But when life finally does confirm it, when the message comes, when the encounter happens, when the energy becomes physical, the question will not only be, are they back? The deeper question will be, can this return meet the version of me who no longer abandons herself? That is the question that protects your destiny. So for now, let the restlessness teach you. Let it move you into preparation instead of panic. Let it clear what no longer belongs. Let it show you what still triggers you. Let it reveal how much steadier you have become. Let it remind you that something can be close without needing to be forced. And if your spirit has been restless lately, pause before you panic. Something may already be moving toward you in the unseen. Not to pull you backward, to meet you forward. Not to repeat the wound, to test the healing. Not to make you lose yourself again. To show you that this time, you can feel love approaching and still remain whole. Lesson of this chapter: restlessness can be sacred when it does not pull you backward, but prepares you forward. Your spirit may sense reunion before your life confirms it, but a true reunion must be met from alignment. Not panic, not chasing, not self-abandonment. The restlessness is not asking you to lose yourself. It is asking you to become ready. If this message reached the part of you that has been feeling movement before proof, comment, "My spirit knows reunion is near." Or write, "I stay aligned as reunion approaches." And if you stayed until the end, take this gently. You are not behind. You are not losing your peace. You are not crazy for feeling the shift. Your spirit may already know something your life has not confirmed yet. So stay grounded. Stay open. Stay aligned. What is truly meant for you will not need your panic to find you.